Hi, my name is Katie, and I'm going to be talking about deaf culture and cochlear implants. A cochlear implant is a device that is placed into the cochlea of the inner ear, right here, this purple piece, and it has wires that connects to the cochlear nerve. That is and the cochlear nerve is what allows the brain to perceive sound. The installation of a cochlear implant is an outpatient procedure, but the patient has to go to therapy to develop the skills they need to use their implant properly, which is something to be considered for anyone who decides to get a cochlear implant. The thing that makes deaf culture different from other cultures is that it's not just a culture based on race or religion. And a person can be born into it, but they do not have to be. It could be through something that happens to them, such as an accident or illness that causes them to lose their hearing completely or even partially. In the past, it has been looked down on in the deaf community to have a cochlear implant. This is because it is seen as not wanting to be a part of the deaf community or being ashamed of them. That is not the case for most people who made the decision to get one. They just thought that they were doing what was best for them and their children. It is a personal decision and it's not up for judgment for anyone else. But to understand why the deaf community would think this, we have to understand the history of deaf culture. In the past, deaf children were sent to schools and forced to learn to speak by putting their hand on their face and mimicking the mouth movements of their teacher. They were also forced to read lips, and they were not allowed to use American Sign Language, also known as ASL. Their culture was being stripped away from them, and hearing people thought that they were fixing them, but there was never anything to be fixed in the first place. This is obviously not being practiced anymore, but people in the deaf community still remember when it was happening or have heard about it from other people in the deaf community. It is up to doctors and the medical community as a whole to understand this history because it is recent history, and some deaf parents may not want their child to have to go through the procedure because of it. Have been a long history of the medical community as viewing deafness as an illness or deficiency that must be fixed, but it is not. Some other parents may be offended by doctors asking more than once if they have already said no to the procedure. Also, as well as this happens in many other cultures in the medical community, but just because an individual does not speak the same language as the physician or the other people in the healthcare service, that does not mean that they lack any intelligence. A person could be very sophisticated in the language they use in ASL, but not be able to speak English that well because of their deafness. And should not be judged for doing so because deaf people, just as well as anyone else, can pick up on body language and social cues of being disrespected. Overall, the deaf community needs to be respected as having their own culture because too often they are forgotten about, and people forget that culture is not just a religion or ethnicity, but the actions, behaviors, and traditions that connect all these people. Too often, the deaf community is forgotten about and slumped together with everyone else. To conclude, I think everyone should learn about the history of deaf culture and be competent when it comes to understanding their needs and communicating. And these are just some of my articles that I use. Thank you so much for listening.